Right, just so you know, and it's not often I say this, but just so you know, just so you, yes, you know, there's a postscript at the end of the video. Ho hum. Right then, hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, welcome one and all. My name is Paul, I'm also called Knick-Knack, I'm the brains behind the Daily Teaser. I'll try and put a link to that under the eyeball in the corner there. I also talk about movies, and I've seen a couple just recently that you may want to look out for. I also talk about TV shows that I've watched. Just recently I've been doing all sorts of things, but first things first, I should tell you that I've been watching Star Trek Strange New Worlds, the first series of it, apart from last Friday. Usually I watch the episode on a Friday and I'm watching one at a time. Last Friday I actually watched Hellraiser, and you'll find my review of it here on Knick-Knack's Old Peculiar and on my YouTube channel at Mr. Cuddy2977. Go watch the reviews and let me know what you think if you've seen the film. If you haven't seen Hellraiser, go see Hellraiser. It's very good. At any rate, that is not what I wanted to talk about tonight, despite offering an apology for missing an episode last week. I actually wanted to tell people that yes, it's Friday, yes, things are back to normal here at Mr. Cuddy2977. I am now starting to pick up where I left off with Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Last night was Friday the 14th of October, tonight is Saturday the 15th, and last night I watched episode 4 of the first series of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, and I wanted to let you know what I thought. Episode 4, Memento Mori, opens with a summary of earlier episodes, and then shifts to show a security officer Laan Noonien Singh, Christina Chong, recording a log entry. The USS Enterprise, it seems, is on its way to Finibus 3, specifically to deliver an atmospheric processor. Whilst the ship is on the trip, its crew are marking Starfleet Remembrance Day, the Starfleet's fictional equivalent to Remembrance Day here in the UK. They all wear a little badge honouring the lost crew on other ships they've served on. Something Lieutenant Noonien Singh feels very ambiguous about. She spent years trying to forget about the SS Puget Sound. Meanwhile, Cadet Uhura, Celia Rose Gooding, has been rotated down to engineering and is currently being grilled by Chief Engineer Hammer, Bruce Horak, about the AP350, the processor that's getting delivered to Finibus 3. It uses charged positron rods to stabilise an ion matrix and filter the air. A little piece of knowledge that impresses Hammer when Uhura shows that she knows it. But as the famously grumpy chief engineer warns her, she's going to have to do more than theorise and quote statistics if she wants to really impress him. Up on the bridge, Laan reports in, just as helmsman Erica Ortegas, Melissa Navia, she's my favourite character, announces that the ship is in orbit over a Federation colony planet, one that, to Captain Pike, Anson Mount, seems strangely deserted. And, as Spock, Ethan Peck points out, the satellite communication, or the communication satellite, the one it's got, has been destroyed. The captain's best option is to send down a landing party to see what's happened to the seemingly abandoned colony. As number one, Rebecca Romaine finds, the colonists haven't exactly abandoned their home. The colonists have been massacred, dragged to a convenient blood-soaked spot, and then moved somewhere. Back on the Enterprise, an unknown ship approaches, a ship that has Captain Pike ordering raised shields and a yellow alert until the ship makes contact. Seemingly, the remaining colonists from Finibus 3 are on that cargo ship and can't be transported off, as the ship they're on has a very reinforced hull to keep in radiation. The only thing the colonist leader can tell Lan and number one and the captain, once they get over through the airlocks, is that the planet was hit by a rain of fire, something Lan feels she's seen before, back when she was on the Puget Sound. Now, first things first, I'm going to do what I tried doing at the start of this piece and apologise to regular readers who were expecting to watch and review this episode last week on the 7th. I didn't. I watched the Hulu version of Hellraiser instead. The remake was something I've been wanting to catch for quite some time, ever since I got wind of it way back in the day. You've got my apologies, but also an enthusiastic recommendation. That new version of Hellraiser, I believe, is worth the time. But this is not about Hellraiser, this is about Memento Mori. You're asking me the usual question. Good, bad, or indifferent? What did you think, Paul? Did it remind you of anything? Did it feel good? For starters, reminded. Was I reminded of anything? Yes. Something Star Wars, of all things, does very well, right from the very start, is good old-fashioned space battles. Literally from that first 1977 Star Wars film. Exciting space battles which were science fiction recreations of the aerial dogfights in films like The Dam Busters and 633 Squadron. And Imperial battle cruisers that, much like the Battlestars in Battlestar Galactica, obviously, were science fiction versions of Battlestars and aircraft carriers. It's something I think is a common trope in a lot of big sci-fi, and it's something I think 90s versions of Star Trek seem to pick up on. I got distinct memories of similar aerial dogfights, sort of space battles, particularly in later seasons of Deep Space Nine, when the Dominion War was going off. They were having dogfight-style battles. But I've also got distinct memories of Star Trek The Wrath of Khan, that second classic Star Trek film. The battle scenes in Star Trek The Wrath of Khan weren't dogfights. They were very far from aerial dogfights. No, if anything, they were submarine battles. Appropriately enough, as the director, Nicholas Meyer, described the film as basically Hornblower in space, a sort of naval adventure in space. They were a ship versus a submarine, or two submarines fighting, the Enterprise and the Reliance, I should say. And my point here is simply that a good bulk of Memento Mori was that same sort of tense, dramatic space battle as submarine warfare, or submarine warfare as space battle, I should say. It was tense, it was dramatic, and it was very exciting. As exciting in Memento Mori as it was in Wrath of Khan. It was something that kept me watching. So we have, as one thread of that episode of Memento Mori, we have a Wrath of Khan style naval battle, but that is just literally one thread. Another is La'an's backstory and a murder mystery. What killed the colonists? That is answered by telling us, or giving us some of La'an's story, in part through she tries to dig at her repressed memories by using a mind meld with Spock, so that we and he can see what she's trying to repress. And it seems that La'an's former ship, the SS Puget Sound, was hijacked by the Gorn, taken to a Gorn nursery world, and the surviving crew, or the crew that survived the raid, getting used as food for baby Gorn. La'an was the only one to escape. It's a very grim mix of film noir and Silence of the Lambs, if you will. It's that kind of dark tone. It's a serial killer thriller rather than a Miss Marple whodunit. So we have that thread. A very grim, dark thread indeed, I think, going through the episode. And we also have something of a third by a light contrast, we have Uhura helping the injured chief engineer Hema repair the processor, the atmosphere processor, an atmosphere processor that's on the point of exploding and killing them both, and inconveniently blowing them out the bloody airlock of the blooming cargo bay. It's a processor that needs fixing, but that Hema can't do because he's broken his hand. So he needs Uhura's help to get this thing fixed. But that's not everything about the episode. That's not the only thing that had me reminiscing. Possibly is the wrong word here. Probably the word I'm looking for is maybe comparing. That plotline with Hema and Uhura, that literally had me thinking of an old episode of Star Trek Enterprise called Minefield, where Captain Archer is stuck on the hull of the Enterprise, his Enterprise, with an injured Malcolm Reed, played by Dominic Keating, with a pair of them trying to disarm a Romulan mine that's basically spiked Lieutenant Reed's leg to the hull. La'an herself puts me in mind of Reed, a posh English security officer, or armoury officer in Reed's case, who's got a stiff upper lip the size of Knightsbridge and a mildly gung-ho attitude buried underneath the stiff upper lip. There's possibly a side issue there. More on that later in the postscripts. There is also Melissa Navia as Lieutenant Ortegas, she's got some very funny one-liners, including a dive reference that put me in mind of submarine combat. But she puts me in mind both of Commander Jet Reno from Discovery, that sort of slightly dryly wacky and dryly cynical comment that she occasionally comes up with, and of Ensign Chekhov, whose very mordant sense of humour delivers some of the better one-off lines. That whole "guess who's coming to dinner" thing seems very much the case here. Where can you go wrong with a mixture like that? It had me looking at it and looking out for her whenever she crops up. I'm also thinking that at the other end of the emotional scale, we've got funny at one end, we've got deadly serious at this other end. This episode hinted at a new threat from a revamped Gorn. Now, the Gorn have only been seen once in the original series, and very rarely since then. And given that Season 2 of Star Trek Picard seems to have turned the Borg into allies, I'm wondering, is Strange New Worlds trying to rework the Gorn as a replacement, sort of gruesome replacement for the Borg? I don't know. I've not seen the whole of the series, and I expect that to develop over another episode or two from what little I know of this series. We'll have to see. But it seems interesting to me. But moving on to my final thoughts, I am probably making Memento Mori sound like an unbelievable hodgepodge of stuff that's been badly put together, baked badly, and having unpleasant lumps and bumps all over the place. But it's not. It really isn't. This is a surprising mix of elements worked into a very effective mystery of the week or monster of the week kind of episode. It's very effective, very well made, and as with earlier episodes of this series of Strange New Worlds, incredibly bloody watchable. With this episode and Hellraiser out of the way, frankly, I am going to be watching episode 5, Spock Amok. I wonder what that's about. Next Friday, on Friday the 21st, and I will be posting my reviews on the 22nd, the Saturday immediately afterwards, and I would love it if you join me both for the episode and for my written and video reviews. I'll see you next week. Remember, I've given Memento Mori 4 stars. Have a very, very, very good time. Take care, be good, do not fall off the potato. Right, to the best of my knowledge, the makers of Star Trek have hired 6 English actors since making Star Trek The Next Generation. 4 of them, Patrick Stewart, Alexander Siddig, Dominic Keating, and Christina Chung, all sound incredibly posh. Very, very cut-glass posh. Straight out of Knightsbridge accents. Stewart, though, is a Yorkshireman and would possibly scare his US audience to death using his native Yorkshire dialect. David Ajala, Book in Star Trek Discovery, and Marina Sirtis, Councillor Troy, are both from Hackney. And I know, which is not a posh accent at all, one little bit, I should add here, for our American audience. Now, I know that they will all be using, when they're working on the show, and generally working, they'll tend to use what's called received pronunciation, standard Queen's English, or King's English, I should say now. But it's basically the sort of standard BBC English, given that they work internationally, although obviously I'd imagine they're capable of changing to whatever's appropriate for the role. But Lord, I'm getting sick of hearing posh English accents on Star Trek. I would not say no to hearing or seeing an episode of Star Trek in any of the series done as if it were a remake of Snatch, Cockney accents included.